What do people complain about that literally never happens? Drugs and Halloween candy. The only documented case was a man that poisoned his and his neighbor's children for life insurance. People trying to always sell me drugs as a kid. What I meant was how everyone says to watch out for that guy who goes, "Hey kid, want some drugs?" That is a rare occurrence that very few people witness, don't you think? Of course, people offer you in high school, college, work. I mean, what are friends for? It happened once to me when I was 15, but I just told the other kid, "No thanks, I don't smoke weed." And he was like, "Alright." A cashier gives someone a weird look because of an item that they bought or commenting on items they're buying together. Never worked as a cashier, but I'm pretty sure they don't care what you buy. And "Hi, how are you? Find everything you were looking for?" is code for hurry and pay for your stuff and then get out. Quicksand. Now that I think of it, it feels like every kid's show back then had some quicksand scene in it. They do, and I was terrified of quicksand as a kid. We went to some amusement park and there was a story walkthrough that had quicksand as a scene, and I just lost it and had to be taken home early. Adult me is very grateful that it isn't an actual thing that happens everywhere. I've read stories about people, women, yelling at men for holding the door open for them. I don't know if that's never happened, but where I am, I'm willing to bet it's never happened. I'm a woman and I hold doors open for everyone. Most people I know do. It's common courtesy. I'm British, and if someone holds the door open for someone else, you can end up in a "no, after you, I insist" infinite loop. Then eventually both people try to go through the door at the same time and end up apologizing profusely. Canada does this too, but where do you think they learned it? This literally happened to me about 10 minutes ago. Obviously, I can't leave my office again before I know they've left for the day. Claiming that the President of the United States will hijack democracy and stay president when their second term is over. Some claimed that W would do this, similar claims about Obama. If Trump manages a second term, most likely someone will claim the same about him. Living in Colorado, where people, news agencies, and clueless law enforcement constantly fear-mongering over marijuana-laced candies being given out to trick-or-treaters the entire month of October. No one has ever done that ever. Not only are edibles kind of pricey and come in limited small servings per container, 10 milligram servings, and there's normally 4 or 5 per container, but no one in the history of edibles has bought 500 of them, spent like $1,000+ and thought, "Let's go drug some frickin' kids." I have a friend that always goes bananas about these things. This year, I actually stopped her from talking about it and explained that no one is giving away free drugs. Drugs are expensive. Why would they do that? Especially randomly, where there's no guarantee of a return customer. She was like, "Oh." I used to work at a computer tech support firm. Held the job full-time for 3 years, back-to-back calls. My confession, our customers weren't nearly as technically illiterate or rude to me as my colleagues made them out to be. Actually, 99% of our customers were kind and just wanted help. I guess exaggerated stories of the call center just made for good smoke break conversation. It's like a rite of passage in the phone support world. We sometimes received a rude customer, but chances were that they had just been worn down from an earlier call with an inexperienced employee. Rarely did we get the entitled prick, and when we did, he or she was always pretty easily taken care of. I'm always wondering why the people most afraid of terrorism are the ones who live way out where the buses don't go, and almost certainly don't regularly spend time with people who don't look an awful lot like themselves. My cousin lives way out in the sticks. I mean, they have a use for the phrase, "the main dirt road," because they live on a dirt road that is off of another dirt road. It makes the front page of their weekly newspaper when the grocery store has a new manager. Every second or third post on Facebook by some miracle, they have decent internet service, is some macho bullcrap about being ready for ISIS. A lot of stuff about Muslims too, even though I'd be a little surprised if any Muslims lived within 20 miles of him or if he'd ever met one. The war on Christians in the US. No one is persecuting you. Jon Stewart put it best. You have confused a war on religion with not getting everything you want. Exactly. As a Christian myself, this infuriates me to no end. So you've spent decades physically and psychologically tormenting LGBT people, let millions die of a certain virus, kick them onto the streets, and damn them to hell. And yet, when Obergefell is ruled and these people are given some basic human rights, you're the victim? You're not being persecuted. In fact, the law still allows churches to refuse to hold same-sex marriages. You're not the victim. You know what you guys are? Spoiled, rotten little brats. People getting Taco Bell craps. Y'all just got weak stomachs. Taco Bell was my absolute favorite fast food place as a kid, and I never had a problem. As an adult, I hardly ever go there. Maybe like once every couple of years, but I still have never gotten sick from it. It's probably from overeating. That'll give you the loose poops from any restaurant food. Office workers exaggerate how many hours they work. Working a 55-hour week once or twice a year doesn't mean that you do that every single week. I sit next to all of you every day and watch you put in 40-hour weeks just like me, but we still sit there interviewing job candidates and tell them how we work hard here, usually 50 to 60 hours. Why are we lying to ourselves about this? It's not a thing to brag about. When I hear people are working that hard, I just feel bad for them. They are either getting paid too little, have a crappy home life, are understaffed, or are bad at their job. All of those things that deserve pity, not praise. Academics do this a lot too. Tenured and tenure-track professors estimate that they put in 60-hour weeks regularly because they set their own research and writing schedules. It just feels like a lot more than an 8-to-5 job because you did 2 hours on a Saturday afternoon, or worked in the evening instead of the morning one day, etc. I don't think a lot of people realize that a 60-hour work week over 5 days is working from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. every single day over and over again. Yes, grad students as well. My lab mates are always telling me about how they work these long weeks, but in reality, we just work odd hours that seem long. I often work 9 to 2, go to the gym, and then work another 2 to 3 hours in the evening, because that's exactly the reason why we often schedule our own time. That's a typical workday of 8 hours, just at different times than a typical worker. Your gay marriage corrupting my kids and turning them into sexual deviants who are okay with marrying a horse and other terrible, terrible stuff. I love the "where do we draw the line" Facebook post I saw when gay marriage was legalized. Like, even as someone who's against gay marriage, you must see the difference between 2 consenting adults and a horse. Chemtrails turning my frogs gay. This is something my local community deals with, but the presence of Muslims and the implementation of Sharia law in America. I've seen countless blogs claiming that my city lives under Sharia now, though not one can cite an actual law. They're secret laws. No one can point out a court case upholding such a thing. Yet, they say, no evidence of community leaders pushing for Islamic domination. A couple even cited an instance where a local Christian church was cited for a civil property infraction, which the church admitted to, corrected the problem, and was done. But it was evidence of a war on Christianity. America sends too much money to other countries. The average American thinks that about 1/3 of the budget goes to foreign aid. In reality, it's not even measurable, less than 1% of the annual budget. Now, the military budget, if you spend money on the military and then send your military to other countries, does that count as sending money to other countries? MSG sensitivity or allergies. MSG isn't a mysterious synthetic chemical, it's a sodium salt of the single most common amino acid in your diet. As far as your body is concerned, though, MSG doesn't exist. When it is dissolved, like in your mouth or stomach or the food that you got from the first place, it dissociates into sodium and glutamate ions. That fact isn't debatable, it's basic chemistry. Salts don't exist once they are dissolved. Read that again. MSG doesn't exist when it is dissolved. It's just sodium ions and glutamate ions. There isn't anything special about this glutamate either, and glutamate is in just about everything you eat. Cheddar cheese can be about 5% glutamate by weight. It's in broccoli and tomatoes, fish, mushrooms, and drink. It's in sushi, raw beans, chicken, and cheese, and your organic kombucha is lousy with it. Add a little sodium to any of those, ignoring the fact that they all contain sodium already. And again, as far as your body is concerned, you have the exact same thing as MSG. MSG, by way of the very definition of salt, is absolutely nothing more than its constituent parts. Nothing gestalt to see here. Let's call dissolved MSG, MSG, because talking about MSG dissolved at biological pH is like calling rain glaciers. Soy sauce is full of naturally occurring MSG, as are tamari and liquid aminos. Oh, and did I mention that the MSG they add to food is produced by fermentation the same way that soy sauce and tamari are? And drink, which also has naturally occurring MSG. And I don't know, frickin' kimchi? How about yogurt? Did you realize that when you started claiming that MSG gives you a headache that your non-fat Greek yogurt has a crapload of it? Study after study has shown that when consuming normal amounts of MSG, the only thing that consistently predicts symptoms of sensitivity is whether or not the person knows they are consuming MSG. If you believe you are sensitive to MSG, you are a victim of the nocebo effect. You cannot be allergic to MSG either. If you were allergic to MSG, then you would be allergic to the most common amino acid in your body and your primary neurotransmitter. You'd be dead. Literally, nobody has ever been harmed by MSG. I don't care how sure you are. You have no freaking idea how many foods that are MSG free are full of natural MSG. And if you did, and you understood basic chemistry, you'd realize just how ridiculous you are being. If you believe you are sensitive to MSG, you are wrong. Stop talking about it, please. You do not know what MSG is. You don't know what you are claiming, and you don't know what you're talking about. MSG allergies equals people with a stomachache because they overate at a Chinese buffet. Stupid, selfish millennials living life for themselves and no one else, squandering all traditions. Yeah, this doesn't happen. We just keep to ourselves and we expect you to leave us alone with your 300-year-old BS. Just because we don't want your crappy traditions to apply to us doesn't mean that we want them to stop existing. Do whatever the hell you want as long as it doesn't affect me. Millennials seems to be a derogatory term these days. I'm also a Gen Xer, and I'm over the moon at how liberated and tolerant the younger generations are. It's like seeing the future of the country in advance. Millennial here, everyone deserves to be treated with respect. Everyone on Reddit seems to think that grown adult men can never talk to children or they'll be stoned by their community. Sure, if for some reason you're trying to have a conversation alone with a goddamn tween at the park, it'll look a little fishy, but as a chubby, hairy adult man in the proper context, I'll talk to kids in passing fairly often, and no one has ever made any sort of problem of it ever. As long as the parent is there, and you're lighthearted about it, you're not going to get crucified for making a joke or funny remark to a child. I also counsel for a church middle school group, and have often chaperoned them outside of the church, and never once has anyone questioned me, restrained me, or given me any sort of dirty look for being with 1 to 6 middle schoolers. Sometimes just girls, sometimes just boys, usually both, on any given day. This one infuriates me because it's almost like these people complaining are the only ones making the situation worse. As long as you're friendly and not overstepping boundaries, you'll generally be welcomed wherever you go. Razor blades in candy during Halloween. I'm pretty sure that it only happened once, and it was some guy who did it to his own kid for insurance purposes. Immigrants taking your jobs! You would literally never even consider sweeping the streets or cleaning houses for a living, you cretin. So just to clarify, I honestly didn't mean to offend immigrants whatsoever. I work alongside many people from various countries across the world in all sorts of disciplines, and I will happily state that they are excellent at their jobs and thoroughly decent people. Strangely enough, just like the majority of people I work with. Who would have thought? The gist of my original comment wasn't to intend or imply that immigrants only do manual labor work. If it came across that way, I sincerely apologize. The mythical welfare queen in front of them in line at the grocery store buying $700 in steak with food stamps before getting in their brand new Escalade. Like, welfare fraud exists, but it is so statistically small and infrequent that it's extremely unlikely that people see it anywhere near as much as they claim to do. The closest I've ever gotten to seeing someone I knew who looked like a welfare queen, she was on WIC, so food stamps for people with infants, and had a cell phone, knockoff designer purse, nails done, and obviously dyed hair. But her parents still paid for her cell phone. She was married at this point. The bag was less than $20, and she did her own hair and nails. She worked at a salon, but anyone who just glanced at her would likely have thought that she was gaming the system. Vegans telling everyone that they're vegans. I've only ever read about it on the internet. I used to work in a vegetarian restaurant, and trust me, those vegans do exist. They'll casually mention how long it's been since they became vegan. They'll ask if you're sure something is vegan and not just vegetarian, etc. But then you also get the vegans that only really care about being vegan 70% of the time. It's usually when they're with their friends, but sometimes they'll come to ask for a vegan cheeseburger and we'll tell them that we're out of vegan cheese and they'll be like, oh whatever, I'll cheat today. Just use normal cheddar. Voter fraud affecting elections in the US. There was something like 6 documented cases this past election out of 120 million votes cast. Not to be confused with election fraud, which happens a bit more. I bring this up only because people who want to pass laws to stop voter fraud often conflate the two in order to make it sound like a more serious problem. I got a raise and now I'm in a different tax bracket so I make less. Nice humble brag, moron, that's not how taxation works in the US. We have lots of social welfare here in Australia, and it's pretty common for this to happen. If you earn a bit more, you lose your healthcare card, cheap public transport, cheap medicine, you lose your rental assistance and your family tax benefit is reduced. Then you lose exemption to the Medicare tax contribution. It's usually worth it to work, but if you're right on the border, then it can be better to work a little less. That we eat 7 spiders a year while sleeping. Australia would be dead by now. I've held doors open for probably hundreds of women in the course of my lifetime, and not once was I ever berated or given the evil eye for this sexist behavior. Everyone being on disability for a free ride and money. They are not stealing from taxpayers, so they don't have to work. The process to get disability is very, very long and difficult. Literally everyone is denied the first time and you have to fight for it. They really make sure you are disabled. Guess what? Almost every one of them wants to be able to work. Do you think they want to be disabled and held back in life? I would absolutely love to not feel how I do every day. I'd love to be a functional member of society and have a social life. You really don't get a good amount of money, not even to be worth it. However, they have enough to eat and pay a bill, maybe buy a new shirt, enough to feel like you matter at least a little. All I'm saying is that when I stopped going on subreddits and watching videos talking about social justice warriors after a month, I completely forgot about them. I'm sure once in a blue moon you'll run into one without looking for them, but otherwise they barely exist to me. I think SJWs are something that people like to be mad at, so the people complaining about them are usually the ones who look for them. Not being allowed to say Merry Christmas anymore. So often this is used as an anti-PC argument, and though I'm sure it has happened in a couple of customer service environments, it's way overblown. Hooking up with someone and getting a card that says, "Welcome to the world of AIDS." I'm pretty sure these stories were presented by pastors at church to promote abstinence. I mean, if you have HIV or AIDS and don't disclose it to a sexual partner, I'm pretty sure that's a felony. In the US, government's gonna take my guns. During the Obama administration, gun and ammo manufacturers made money hand over fist on that hysteria. You atheists pushing your belief on others, whenever the Freedom from Religion Foundation, or American Atheists, or Americans United for Separation of Church and State, or the ACLU, etc., brings a lawsuit against some courthouse or school or other public institution because of that institution's endorsement of a specific religion, normally some breed of Christianity, you hear the cry that this is atheists pushing their beliefs on the rest of us. But it isn't. It's about the separation of church and state, a fundamental principle in the US Constitution. The only position a government should take on religion should be neutral. That's secularism. I have never seen, met, or heard of an atheist who went around trying to pressure other people into atheism. We tend to be quite happy to talk about religion, and we tend to win those arguments, but that's something completely different. The standard organizations like the Freedom from Religion Foundation and American Atheists seek to enforce is secularism, which is simply that public officials cannot use their position to endorse or push their own belief system. It is not an attempt to push atheism onto one. I have never met an atheist who pushes their views, but I have met a ton who have insulted people I care about's views for no reason other than to prove a point. Not meaning to be political, but I always see posts and rallies about banning or stopping Sharia law in the US. I've yet to witness anyone supporting it. I find people afraid of it tend to be pushing for their own religion-based laws, the irony being completely lost on them. It would have to be getting put in the friend zone. No one gets put there. If you treat the guy or girl as a friend by playing it safe and taking your time, you put yourself in the friend zone. Go further and show you're interested in more than just friendship. There's no such thing as a friend zone because that implies you're entitled to date every woman you meet, and the only reason you can't date her is because of something she did. I would argue that there is a friend zone, but just not in the same sense that you see it. Of course, by no means am I saying that anybody owes anyone a date. How I see the friend zone is, for example, John likes Sally. John asks Sally to be his girlfriend. Sally declines because she just wants to be friends. John is in the friend zone. If John is mature and doesn't pester Sally about it, then he is just a guy who is in the friend zone. Oh well. However, if he starts stressing about how she led him on or something like that, then yeah, he's an entitled peen. Maybe I'm being too literal, but people always complain that it's the end of the world, but it literally never happens. It's ending, it's just going in slow motion. Girls that complain that they can't get into shape but won't lift weights because they might get bulky. If it was that easy to gain muscle, everyone would be ripped. Did you just assume my gender? LMAO, I'm pretty sure most trans people will just tell you their pronouns if you can't tell what gender they are. If you want to be a jerk and misgender them after they've told you, that's your problem. My girlfriend doesn't pass yet, and is totally aware of it, and she has no issue with someone assuming she's a feminine dude. She just politely informs them she's a trans gal. Gays ruining America? Every time there's a terrorist attack, there are a few people who claim it's a false flag. Never fails. Ask for a source and they'll give you a link to Alex Jones or some poorly put together YouTube video. Unfortunately, OP asked for things that literally never happen, and there are documented cases of actual false flag operations. People with HIV putting blood in McDonald's ketchup dispensers. Wage gap. Immigrants simultaneously taking our jobs and not working and claiming benefits. Manspreading. I experience this often enough in my major metropolitan area, so it does literally happen from time to time. However, I find that most men on public transportation or in group seating situations are quite respectful. It's just a number who are either oblivious or purposefully a jerk. The point is more, I think, that when men open their legs, it's not a sexual intimidation thing. It's an, I've been sitting with my legs together for a while and my crotch is uncomfortable. Source, male. This absolutely happens. Transgender people attacking children in bathrooms because they are allowed in the bathroom of the gender that they identify as. Avocado toast. Then again, I buy lunch at fast food places like a peasant. What do you mean it never happens? Like you've never seen it on the menu, or never ordered it, or doubt its existence in general? Or do you think that the bread should be made from avocado, but it's always made from wheat instead? Someone complained that millennials couldn't afford houses because they spend their money on things like avocado toast instead. I suppose it's not really complaining about, but when I was young, I honestly thought Elvis impersonators and quicksand would have a larger role in my life. Trans people abducting kids from restrooms. I'm a decent-looking girl with some really good-looking friends, and while I wouldn't say that it literally never happens, getting catcalled is not a daily or regular thing like many women claim. I think this depends on where you live. When I lived in a larger city, I got catcalled fairly often. The war on Christmas. No one cares who you wish what. Just stop playing a martyr. All because of a red cup at Christmas. 2 years ago, I had a coworker yell at me for buying Starbucks in a red cup. He said it offended him as a Christian. I told him not to be offended because to me the red cup stood for communism, comrade. The whole SJW feminists takeover is a load of bullcrap. This mentality is very prevalent in colleges in a lot of places, largely in part because of bad teachers. For example, Naima Lowe. People like that are very rare outside of classes like gender studies. However, the people who are like that are very loud, and since students being attacked by people or accusing people of things they are not doing on a massive scale isn't supposed to happen, people do get upset about it. Takeover? Nah. These people are, however, an issue. Mexicans stealing our jobs. Getting sick from being cold. An immigrant from Mexico literally taking a job that they desperately wanted. Vegans being loud and obnoxious about their food choices. I've had people simply say they can't eat X or Y because they're vegan, but nothing to the extent you hear about. Former vegan here, this is usually what they mean. The simple act of informing people in a relevant situation, like them offering you food or picking a restaurant or whatever. Saying, no thanks, I'm vegan, one time will inevitably become, and then this preachy vegan SJW literally couldn't shut up about their stupid diet, and it was so in your face and annoying when they retell the encounter to their friend later. Not that it never happens, because obviously it does, but terrorism in the USA is not as huge of a problem as the media and Trump make it out to be. The terrorists in the US are all self-radicalized, so the Muslim ban wouldn't actually do anything, and the chances of a terrorist attack happening to you are very slim, and it's completely blown out of proportion. Democrats coming to take their guns. Coworkers, friends, family members, acquaintances, what do they all have in common? They complain that their bodies won't allow them to lose weight despite dieting or exercise. They don't really diet or exercise. The complaining continues forever. The government is going to take everyone's guns away. People looking up to the Kardashians. I don't think I've ever met someone who thinks they're all legitimate role models. In my experience, vegans are trying to shame meat eaters. I'm not vegan, but my friends complain about how they are so annoying and try to get people to stop eating meat. But when I ask them about it, they admit that they've never actually met someone like that in real life. Food stamp fraud and/or welfare recipients being drug addicts. I could rant about this for hours, but I need to go take a blood pressure pill since my blood boils just thinking about this ignorance. All the SJW bullcrap you see posted online I have never seen in real life. Also, I've never seen a Muslim start any trouble in real life either. I guess I must be a leftist. This will be relevant, I swear. I hate people who draw a false narrative to act like someone is being victimized or attacked verbally when in reality no one is complaining or attacking anyone. For example, if a 6-year-old kid got on the front page of Reddit for being a prodigy on the drums, there will be that one guy whose top comment is something like, "To all the people calling this kid crap at the drums, you guys don't realize professional drummers have been practicing for blah 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 insert pandering bullcrap." When in reality, the overwhelming majority of people are leaving positive feedback, if any feedback at all, and there are such a minuscule amount of people leaving negative comments. They do this for attention, and it's so obvious, yet there are so many mindless drones falling for the bullcrap. I see this a lot more on viral videos on Facebook. I just thought it would be easier to portray my analogy on the platform that we are all currently using, Reddit. Getting killed by a foreign terrorist. I live in Chicago. I'm not really worried about ISIS, but some of my coworkers think that's a real concern. Syrian refugees invading America and forcing Sharia law onto the lands of the free. Also death panels. Parents forcing children to be transgender. Fit people mocking out-of-shape people in the gym. If anything, it's the opposite. I started going to the gym regularly when I was 100 pounds overweight and got nothing but help and encouragement. Terrorism in the US. You are more likely to die in a car accident than a terrorist attack, yet I don't see people declaring war on cars. No one complains about it, but cow tipping doesn't happen. Unskilled migrants coming to the country and taking jobs. Always said by people who are still employed or unemployed unrelated to migrants, in a 99.8% white area where the nearest shop is 1.5 kilometers away. Thanks for watching until the end. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so that you know when our next video is available. For more videos like this one right now, please stop by our channel. Thanks again, and see you next time.